I was aware long before I played Demon Summoner that it was a bad game, and while bad games can make for great videos, I wasn't convinced that Demon Summoner would be one of them and figured it would just be something of a forgettable slog that wouldn't lend itself to a very good story. I was wrong. Demon Summoner was developed by Atomic Planet Entertainment and published by Midas Interactive in 2006. Now you may hear that and think that Midas is the big tell for this story, as they were a publisher world-renowned for their fervent need to publish anything cheap they could get their hands on in the 90s and 2000s, basically all of which being complete dog water. Now I could do an entire video on Midas and honestly probably should one of these days, but while I am impressed with just how shit their game catalog is, publishers of this caliber were especially dime a dozen at this time when everyone was racing to the bottom to make as much money as possible while development was still relatively cheap. However, the real meat to this story is actually found within the game's developer, Atomic Planet Entertainment. Formed by Darren and Jason Falkus, two brothers who have one of the most impressive resumes in the gaming industry, with Jason having published his first game, Sporting Decathlon, for the Dragon 32 in 1983 at the age of 13. But while these guys may have been in the industry since the very beginning and have owned and operated multiple studios and have had their hands in roughly 100 games, the reason you may be unfamiliar with their names is due to their commitment to the cardinal sin of making games that were neither tremendous nor abominable trash. Every once in a while they would get a hit like NBA Jam on the SNES or Batman Forever.
I'm not gonna lie, this shit really sucks.
But more often than not, they were just pumping out 6 out of 10s that were more or less mediocre and ultimately forgotten. Luckily, this was not the fate for Atomic, the studio I believe to be the swan song of their careers, as this was where they managed to release games that everyone who has played them will remember forever.
You're crazy. You know that, right? But you're perfect.
For better or for worse.
What?
Okay, maybe just for worse.
Yo! The oob! We're getting some oob!
This isn't a good place to be, gentlemen.
You'd be forgiven for your unfamiliarity with some of their lesser known titles such as Robin Hood Defender of the Crown, Stealth Force The War on Terror, Charlotte's Web, and Family Feud, but do you mean to tell me you've never heard of Mike Tyson Heavyweight Boxing, the 5th worst Metacritic scoring PS2 game of all time? That's right, this is the team responsible for Demon Summoner, a game more putrid and stinky than a 2-liter of Jankum in the Phoenix summer sun. But how did this happen? Throughout my 3 or so hours playing the game, I was haunted not by the goings-on of the agonizing game itself, but also by the question of how is this possible? How did this game make it onto a disc, into a case, and ultimately onto... Oh my god, it has a manual. Thank you! For many years, it seemed this question was destined to go unanswered, which would make sense as, well, no one was really asking, but John Walker of Eurogamer did manage to speak with the game's programmer Chris Simpson in 2011, a developer with a staggering bummer of a credits list, having worked on Driver 3, Mike Tyson Heavyweight Boxing, and Family Feud, before finally being able to redeem himself many years later with the cult hit Project Zomboid. Eurogamer began the interview with the most important question, and one that I had been asking myself for quite some time, which is, why? "We were told to," he replied, before adding, "This is somewhat the destiny of being a small independent studio that has to pay wages and for office space that hasn't got the resources behind it to develop their own IPs. It seems like a vicious cycle of trying to make money from outsourced projects to pay for staff to make outsourced projects, and if you're not careful, it can lead to a dark place. While working on it, it's easy to feel like it's your boss's fault or the designer's fault or your own fault, but really it's just about a company trying to make its way with limited resources. It's easy to judge a game on how it turns out, but it's never the full story." Jumping into the game blind, it would actually be fairly easy to fall into a false sense of security, thinking it might actually be good. This opening cinematic is actually pretty solid, and the story itself isn't half bad either. The main character, a large hunk of British grit and gristle by the name of James Farrington, tells us the story of his child being murdered by monsters and how his wife Emily was violated before being turned into a vampire. This is the catalyst to our story, as he is now searching for his wife Emily in order to kill her, thus releasing her of the vampire's curse and releasing her of her misery. The diary entries that open each chapter feel like something straight out of Dracula or Frankenstein, and I'm honestly super into it. The first level of the game takes us to Whitechapel, the London borough most famous for being the site of murders often attributed to Jack the Ripper at the turn of the 19th century. Jack the Ripper is even mentioned in the diary, as we're told that Emily is the one who is in fact behind the famous murders. This opening was so interesting to me that I even sustained disbelief for just a moment, thinking, you know what, maybe the graphics and gameplay are about as appealing as wet bread, but there could really be something to this. But that was just because the gameplay hadn't actually started yet, because within the first few seconds of the game, I found this invisible wall, just out here in the open at the beginning of the first level, and I began to understand the true depths of this game's fuckedness, and things only get stinkier than Asmongold's easy chair from here.
Man, what the fuck, dude?
The first level sees the player wandering through a maze of subterranean sewers with a few enemies thrown at you here and there, and while I guess the idea is to spook the player with the enemies often lurking behind corners, it doesn't actually work because every time an enemy is nearby, the frame rate plummets, being a dead giveaway every time. This is also where we learn exactly how combat works in the game. Well, if you consider the enemies chasing you around like you got games on your phone, or like a little kid trying to talk to you about Minecraft is working, which, by the way, with only one exception, is exactly how every single enemy in the game functions. They all just chase you around, foreheads pushing into you as you back up, forcing their head into your sights as if begging to be released from the suffering of existing in this game. What's interesting, however, is that actually landing a shot is a bit of a challenge, as, believe it or not, Demon Summoner is actually turn-based. Yeah, you just walk backwards, and once you stop moving, the enemy stops moving, and that's when you're guaranteed a hit. As far as weapons go, in the first level you only get a crossbow, which looks cool enough but sounds like this, which leaves a bit to be desired. However, you do get a badass revolver at the start of the second level, which would be all well and good if it weren't for this being a stealth level where you insta-fail if you use your new weapon. I understand needing to give players a sense of progression by giving them new weapons, but why would you give me a weapon in the only level in the game I can't use it? If you fail the mission by using your new gun, thus getting caught, the ship you're trying to sabotage leaves, and this guy is left to float through the ether in contemplation. That said, however, I do respect the ambition of a stealth level in this game, I really do. For a game that is essentially held together with scotch tape, popsicle sticks, and tears that can barely handle the complexity of connecting PNG backgrounds, when I realized I had made it to a stealth level, I was impressed and fucking flabbergasted in equal measure. And you know what? They actually more or less pulled it off. I've got to hand it to them. This level does actually work. It's shit, but this level feels like it got the most amount of time in the oven. I had a pretty good sense of where enemy blind spots were. Each enemy had a determined route I was able to predict and move accordingly, so the stealth ended up being an unexpected high point for me, so shout out to this team for being able to understand stealth better than Star Wars Outlaws. Too bad my highlight level couldn't have been further into the game because we still have 4 levels of this godforsaken goof left. Now, the third level is where we should have gotten our revolver, as we spend pretty much this entire level just clearing a mixture of vampires and zombies, and learning that shooting zombies in the head is actually not the proper way to kill them. This is because, unbelievably, Demon Summoner actually has fucking dismemberment mechanics. Take that, Dead Space. It's actually a little bit more fun than Dead Space because the zombies here sing a fun little song every time they die. There is some level of exploration that takes place here as you find your way through the fog to the next area, leading back inside the monastery, which will eventually lead us to our first boss fight of the game, which I was at first morbidly curious about before realizing I didn't have any ammo because the preceding gauntlet of zombies robs you of all of your ammo, and because there aren't any ammo or health pickups in the game, you reach the boss empty-handed. A boss which is actually just a small group of vampires with slightly more HP than the normal vampires, all just chasing you shoulder to shoulder around the arena. It's okay though, you can actually just stab me, rip, stab them to death.
Stabby rip stab stab.
Yay, I did it! Level 4. Jumpin' Jesus Christ, this level is really something. You think a stealth level was ambitious. How about a stealth level where you're also being stalked by a werewolf reminiscent of the Resident Evil Tyrant system who is actually moving around the labyrinth searching for you while you dig through a Scooby-Doo hallway's worth of unlocked doors, and if he finds you, hello again main menu, how nice of you to greet me with a song! Oh, but it's not just a big ass room filled with a bunch of bedoored hallways. Oh no, this labyrinthine epitaph of hopes and dreams is also multi-level. During your search through the insipid prison that is this game, you also come upon the first and only non-hostile NPC, a ghost named Igby the Ghost. Igby tells you to find an item for him in the building where the werewolf is, so you go back through again. Fuck, god damn it! You go back again, find the item, then he tells you his friend needs an item too. Yay! I was hoping this section would be longer. Hey, wait a second, Maddie. A moment ago, you said this is the first and only NPC in the game, but apparently there's actually two? Haha, good catch, but no, the other ghost does not count as an NPC because he doesn't speak and you can't see him. Igby the Ghost speaks to the other ghost, who then passes along what he says to you in a game of celestial telephone. So, I can't believe this. You stand in an empty lot listening to this amorphic, transparent smudge as he listens to and repeats the information given to him by another ghost you can't see or hear, waiting in silence until they are done hearing the other ghost.
As the specters conversed,
So now, we are completing fetch quests for a character we cannot see, given by another character we can neither hear nor see, checking the same exact rooms over and over again in a giant area with a billion doors, being chased through every hallway by a fucking werewolf. Oh my god damn it! Once you eventually push through and find all the items necessary, memorizing and resenting the main menu theme in doing so, you get your weapons back, kill the werewolf, and maybe the most pathetic excuse for a fight I've ever seen.
not long now, boss. I'll be waiting by the exit for you.
Before running into none other than your wife, Emily. Then proceed to kill her to death. But we're not done yet. Just because we've completed the primary task does not mean the story is over, for some reason, which sees us back on the docks, a retreading of the stealth level from earlier, but this time we're able to come in all strapped up and ready to take on more of these guys. So many of these guys. Some werewolves too, for good measure. Anyway, back on track, we find the map, which is the objective of this section. Oh Oh my god! Man, Atomic, I didn't know you had it in you, but that was actually a really good jump scare. Nice job. No need to kill all these newly spawned enemies as the exit is right around. Oh, that was the exit. Okay, well done. Well, that's all, folks. We are now on our way to the end of the game, but not without a quick stop through another level retread, this time being the graveyard and catacombs section from level 3. Not really much here to report aside from there being way more zombies, who we find out are actually kind of chill if you get to know them. How you doing? My name's Terry.
Name's Bill.
How's your wife and kid? Hey, how about summoning up some babes? Okay, so the final boss is actually in 2 phases. The first phase sees us battling off against the vampiric duo from earlier who become invisible, run around the arena like faith healers, and summon in ads in the form of these little infinitely respawning stocky goblin dudes hell-bent on distracting us from our mission. But just like all that came before them, they would fail. We focused, we acted carefully, and just as we had for the last 3 hours or so, give or take, we prevailed. The twins are dead, and humanity is saved from... Wait. Something's not right. Just then, as we began to see hope crack through the darkness, we found that it wasn't hope, but the breaking forth of hell itself, shackled free of its eternal chains. This was supposed to end here. I was supposed to go back to my empty home after having killed my wife to live peacefully. Hell had other plans. A final fight. A fight that will determine the balance not only of the earth, but all of existence. The demon hath been summoned. The lives of every living being within this plane of existence hangs in the balance, and there's just one man for the job. Maybe we do it again. There's just one man for the job. There's just one. You know what? Demon Summoner would release as a PAL exclusive in March of 2006. Yes, you heard that right, 2006, the same year as Gears of War, Elder Scrolls Oblivion, and Call of Duty 3. It was essentially played by no one and noticed by no one, and for all my digging, I could not find a single review of this game that had not been written and posted many years later. Atomic would live on to see another few years of continually dwindling revenue and quality, shockingly releasing over 20 games in the 3 years between Demon Summoner and their bankruptcy in 2009. Another question that was biting at me was, what was it like working at a studio like this, pumping out bad game after bad game to the response of practically no one, which is all the more a bummer when you realize that the games they were responsible for making were usually either ports or cheap knockoffs of games with similar titles, kind of like what I would think of as a video game equivalent to the mockbuster phenomenon found in movies like Transmorphers, Atlantic Rim, Snakes on a Train, that kind of thing. So clearly there is a lot to this story and there's a lot to this company, but there was very little to, let's be real, there's no information about this company online at all. So after some hours of coming up empty-handed, I decided to take things into my own hands. I managed to reach out to every single person who worked on Demon Summoner I could find contact info for. This sounds like a more Machiavellian task than it was. There really wasn't that many people who worked on this game, to the surprise of no one, but I managed to get a few responses. So now I would like to give the floor to some recollections of some of the folks involved, the first of whom being the voice actor of James, who is also credited as an artist on the game, John A. Gibson. I don't get the interest in Demon Summoner. Yeah, sure, it is terrible, and I suppose it's an easy game to pull apart and ridicule how terrible it is for a few cheap laughs. If that is what you want to do, sure, go ahead. I think companies should be held accountable and are not beyond criticism, but speaking for the team, I would say this. The 3 months we worked on it, and we tried to be as professional as we could, even working overtime to do the best job possible in the limited time frame and lack of resource. The artists we had listed within the credits were multitasking, working on multiple games at once, so it's not like we had 5 artists full-time, more like 3, myself being one of them. Personally, I had many of the characters, animations, front-end cinematics, UI, and I even had to do the voice acting in that time too. Students at university would have had more time to create a game than we had, so yeah, is it any wonder how it ended up? At other companies, we would get 3 months just to work on one character, to perfect it and not rush it out as fast as humanly possible. This is the difference between AAA games and bargain bin semi-interactive experiences. I'm passionate about making games that people enjoy and love to play. I had children to feed and bills to pay, so had to do what I was told in the time frame I was given. I left that company because I joined the games industry to be a part of teams who were passionate about games and to contribute towards fun, interactive experiences. I was told by one of the management that I was making a mistake leaving and that I would regret it. I loved some of the people I worked with, and sure, I missed the team, but professionally, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The point about being told he was making a terrible decision is especially funny considering Atomic would be remembered for making garbage and go bankrupt not long after this, and John would go on to become a senior character artist at Epic Games. So yeah, things definitely worked out for him, and I'm stoked to hear it. Now let's move over to one more interview I managed to get, this time with a developer who has requested to remain anonymous. Everything was to do with money, as it is nowadays. Atomic Planet Entertainment was a work-for-hire studio, and the fact that Demon Summoner got made and published probably means the original idea came from the publisher. If I remember correctly, it was part of a group of games that were meant to have short, quick development times, sharing art and code assets where possible. We had our own proprietary engine that was used across several games, so it wasn't hard to switch between different projects. A lot of time, Atomic Planet was surviving month to month, and there were several occasions when salaries were not paid because of no money. Whether that was through missing a milestone and not getting paid by the publisher, or because as a small company, we were at the end of a chain of interested parties and were regularly dicked about because we had little recourse. I must say though, when I left, I had been paid all that I was owed. I'm not aware of anyone still owed money, but I suspect the directors lost a lot of money by the end. Although we tried to get our own IPs made, as far as I know, everything that got published was someone else's idea or IP. I never understood the economics of shovelware, which is what some, not all, of the games were, but presumably they made money for someone. Also at the time, opportunities to work in the games industry were quite limited here in the northeast of England. You were likely to have to move away to London to get a bigger job or a dev job in general. This situation was a bit of a double-edged sword insofar as because your options were limited, you would withstand not being paid a couple months in a row because you couldn't jump ship to another company easily. With regards to bad reviews, I don't know how many people paid attention to them. That's not to say devs were blind to the quality, but no one sets out to make a bad game, even those games that you would call shovelware. Whilst there were computer games, forums, and magazines, you didn't have early access, constant teaser trailers, alphas, betas, social media following your every move, etc. You just made a game in isolation with feedback coming from the publisher as to the direction to go in. I think everyone was aware of Atomic Planet's position in the games industry, but a successful game could have changed that around. At the time, I was at the start of my career, so I was just happy to be there, making games, and not the dull jobs I had done before. So it seems like this would be the end, right? Company gets a bunch of contracts from small to medium-sized publishers, they continually lose money, the game quality gets continually worse, and the studio goes bankrupt. Pretty cut and dry. Fortunately, the story actually does not end here, as these games are actually still kept alive by a small but passionate group of speedrunners that I encountered while researching this video. What was your final time?
I think it was 21:47. That's what I'm gonna guess.
You're underselling yourself. It was 20 minutes and 48 seconds.
Better than I thought.
Yeah.
There was something about it that it really just grabbed me. It was like, because I mean, like, it's not good or like it's not a great game, but
After speaking to the delightful Sir Smuckle and asking him, well, frankly, what the fuck is wrong with him, he graciously let me into the group's Discord Discord server where I was able to speak with a bunch of incredibly devoted and passionate fans of the team's work. One member, AG Developer, has even been working to reverse engineer some of Atomic's games to get a better picture of how they are put together.
I have been trying to kind of like uncompress the main archive format for the games and trying to reverse engineer that.
Why are you reverse engineering all of this stuff?
Honestly, for fun. Just because I want to know what's inside. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Which was made all the easier when he recently discovered that the PC version of Demon Summoner, titled Chronicles of a Vampire Hunter, actually shipped with the debug build contained within the game's files.
A lot of the things that I was working on already, Demon Summoner has been the key all along. And what I have found is mind-blowing.
I find this community incredibly inspiring, and it just goes to show that more often than not, even if it takes decades to get there, there very well may be an audience for the art that you make. So even when times get rough, remember there very well could be a team of people out there eagerly waiting to get their hands on whatever it is that you have been spending all of your time working on. I've left a link to the group's Discord in the description, so if anybody is interested in jumping into some of those games and preventing the hard work of Atomic to be in vain, I will see you there. But that's it for today, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. I am playing through and reviewing every PS2 horror game, as well as plenty of modern content, so stay tuned if any of this is interesting to you. Shout out to Patreon subscribers, Mr. Nobody and Sakre Blue, as well as YouTube channel member Racoon Peddlar. Thank you also, of course, to the developers who took the time to speak with me for this video. Thank you all so much, and I'll smell you later.
Yes! We did it! We did a Demon Summoner run! It was terrible, but we did it.